what I'd like to do. And then we're not losing any. And if people wander in, it's not that big a group. You can hear me? And this microphone's okay, right? Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself and David, and then I would also like to go around the room, and since it's a smaller group, we can introduce ourselves also. My name is Jane Nast, and I'm an adoptive parent, and I'm a member of AAC and Adoptive Parents for Open Records, which came about because of all the things that happened in our lives. So I think you could move on to David.
David Nast, and I was adopted when I was 7 days old. And I had a reunion when I was 14 years old with my birth mother. And
That's enough.
That's enough.
I'm Karen Lindy. I'm an adoptive parent and have a closed adoption with an 8-year-old boy and open adoption.
Speak up just a little bit louder.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm Jean Fargo. I'm an adoptive parent. Two of my children just had reunions this year, and we just passed the bill for open records in Hawaii.
Oh, how wonderful. Oh.
I'm Susan Owens. I'm a full sibling. I've searched and found, and I also assist people with their searches.
I'm Marilyn Waugh. I'm a birth mother. I reunited with my 17-year-old birth son 3 years ago. He's now 20.
I'm Sharon Riches. I'm just exploring. I'm in a pre-match for an open adoption placement that they just do this summer.
Well, let's take you and then we'll go back.
I'm Lauren Wellwood. I'm an adoptive father. My wife is a birth mother who relinquished when she was single, so we've had a reunion with her son 7 years ago, and our daughter, we reunited with her birth parents just before Christmas this year.
I'm Mae Boyden, and I'm a birth mother. I found my daughter 10 years ago, but I've not met her. I met everyone else in her family, but I haven't met her. She's 29.
Wow.
I'm Carol McGreer. I'm a reunited birth mother with my daughter of 3 years almost.
I'm Rhonda LaPalooza, and I'm a reunited birth mother, and this is my daughter.
Wow.
She's here with me.
Great.
Obviously an adoptee, reunited with her mother, her birth mother.
I'm Sheila. I'm
I'm Levada Doxey, and I'm here from Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm an adoption social worker with an agency there, and I've been working with all members of the Triad for about the past 13 years.
That's wonderful. We have a professional in here.
Well, I'm also a family therapist.
Oh, are
for
you?
18 years working at Children's Home Society in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And could
I didn't know if you wanted that.
No, that's okay. Yes, we'd like to know that.
I'm Wallette Scheider from Honolulu. I'm a birth mother and an adoptive mother.
Wonderful. We're hitting all phases of this. If someone else comes in, we'll just sort of move around. Feel free to move your chairs so they can, maybe you want to just pull out a little bit so they can see.
Cold in here.
Is it cold?
Yeah.
David, turn the thermostat down. Okay. Well, I think I want to start a little bit with our background so you know what happened with our story. We adopted David in 1966 when he was 7 days old, which he told you. And 2 years later, we adopted Karen, when she was 21 days old, from an agency in New York City called Spence Chapin, which is one of the largest agencies around, and most people have heard of Spence Chapin. And before I go any further, the one thing I want to tell you is that both of our birth mothers are named Carol, so that when sometimes I forget that I'm not being explicit about the Carol I'm speaking of, and they both happen to be Carol S's, so you can't even put a last name that's different. So I'll try to remember that it's David's Carol and Karen's Carol, although I don't really like to say it's that anyone belongs to anyone else. But the story that happened to our family was that we adopted in '66, and everything was just fine. And I didn't know there were support groups. We didn't belong to any. The agency had invited us back for meetings, but we didn't go. We felt no need for those meetings. So in March of 1980, I was home alone, and a letter came. It was a long letter with no return address on it. And And so I opened it up. I wondered, it did have a postmark of Maine, and I knew nobody who lived in Maine. So I opened the letter, and this is what I received. It said, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Nast, during the past months, I've been attempting to contact you through Spence Chapin Services to Family and Children in order to lessen your trauma. As my efforts to persuade the agency to act as an intermediary were not successful, I decided after serious consideration to personally contact you. I pray you understand the sincerity with which this letter is written and will not view it as an intrusion into your privacy. It will be 14 years this April 11th since I gave birth to a child who is your son, David. As I was only 18 years old, unwed, and without financial means, I made the extremely difficult decision to surrender him for adoption. 3 years later, I married the birth father. David has now reached the age when one begins to establish deep thoughts about self-identity. At this time, he may seek more information concerning his pre-adoption history that you are unable to provide due to the secrecy surrounding traditional adoption policies. In the past 3 months, I have on 2 separate occasions met with Spence Chapin in New York City, and they said, go home and have another baby. I mean, she didn't say that in this letter, but that's what they said to her. So you won't consider me a threat. I asked the agency to act as an intermediary. I'm condensing the letter now, and they refused to do that. They said, go home and have another baby. And so she said she decided that this was a time when David should know about his roots. So her last paragraph says, although I surrendered David, I'm unable to forget his existence. Through the years, I have been concerned about his well-being, for I have always loved him, even though I can never be his mother, as you are. I must confess, I hope someday David will want to meet me, and if he desires to seek me out, that he will have your support in doing so. You need not fear he will encounter rejection, or that by knowing me, I could ever replace you as his parents. The ultimate I could hope for, if anything, is a relationship in which he would look upon me as a friend or being similar to an aunt. I realize that David may strongly resent that I surrendered him, and he may even hate me for it." So she gave her name and her phone number at the end of the letter. And I don't know if you can relate to the feeling that I had, but even when I'm reading it, I get goosebumps. Not only that, but I was crying at the end of the letter. I mean, it was a true shock. I mean, I had never heard of anything like this happening to anyone. And I'd heard the word search, but it didn't mean a lot. You know, search, that's way up out in the distant future. My first thought was, oh, wonderful, David has a family, because we have very few members in our family and another adopted daughter. And then my next thought was, oh my God, she's married the birth father. How many siblings are there? She's young. She's beautiful. Here I am, an old adoptive mother. Is David going to love her more than he loves me? I mean, these are all the thoughts that went through my head. What am I going to do? I did nothing. Dave came home. Now, this is David, and Dave is my husband, so we always have that problem in the family, too. So when you hear Dave, that's the old man, and David is the young man. Dave came home. He read the letter. And the kids weren't there. I don't know where they were on that Saturday. And his first comment was, can she take him away from us? And that hadn't crossed my mind. Legally, could she take him away from us? Emotionally is where I was coming from. And I said, well, I don't think so, but what are we going to do? Well, the first thing we decided was that we should not tell the kids, and we should tell very few people, because if they found out, I mean, if we spread the word around, it could get back to the kids before we could tell them the right way, because we just didn't know what to do. So then the next thought that crossed my mind was, don't answer. You know, if you don't answer, she'll go away. So I didn't answer. Dave and I both decided, let's just let it cool. So in the meantime, though, I did go to the library, and by gosh, I found a whole shelf full of books on adoption. So I started reading, because I didn't know that anyone had even written a book on adoption. One of them was Reuben Panner's book, The Adoption Triangle, and the other was Betty Jean Lifton's Lost and Found, and a third that I didn't finish, it was Florence Fisher's. I was too depressing, and I just put that book away. I didn't want to know about that, being tied in a crib and all of that kind of stuff. So a month later, another letter arrived identical to the first, certified mail, with a little note at the top saying, my first letter must have been lost. So I'm sending another letter. So then we knew that she wasn't going to give up. I mean, she was going to keep in touch. So we went to our minister, and we talked to him. We also talked to a school psychologist who had been working with David because he has dyslexia. So he had been going through the school from first grade with a child study team. And the school psychologist we had a good relationship with, and when I called him, he said, oh, nothing, Jane. You just pick up the phone, you've got her phone number, call her, talk to her, and everything's going to be okay. And I said, I can't do that. I mean, I just could not do that. So Dave and I sat down and composed. Oh, and the other thing Jack said was, that kept harping back to me, if you don't tell David now, and you wait till he's 18, the first question he's going to have for you is, why didn't you trust me? And that that impressed back here. And I guess I heard that on and off as the time moved on. So we sent a letter back to her. Very formal kind of letter. Well, we don't consider you a threat. Yes, we were shocked, but this is not the time. We will tell David when he's 18. Now, there was another reason for it not being the time, but I didn't tell her that. He was in 8th grade, approaching high school, severely dyslexic, and having, really concerned whether he was going to make it through 8th grade, much less start off his freshman year in high school. And we felt this was too much of a trauma for him, since it was for us, for him to take this extra baggage into school with him. So we sent the letter, and this was the end of May, 10 years ago, right around this time. Heard nothing more. Praise the Lord, she's accepted our reasoning, everything is okay, and we can go on and forget about it. So in August, a phone call came, and it was from a man in California. His name is Michael Haig, I've never heard from him since, but he is a professor at Santa Cruz University. And he said that Carol had asked him to act as an intermediary. She was not going to forget, and she was not going to accept our response, wait till he's 18. So I did talk. He was great to talk to, and I asked him questions. I said, do you think she's stable? You can't really ask these questions of a person. That's just rude. Do you think she has some ulterior motives for doing this? No. Are there any other children in the family? No. There were no other children. I don't know why that relieved me. Now I'm sorry about it. I wish there were a whole bunch of brothers and sisters, but there weren't any. But in the meantime, he asked if he talked to my husband. I said, sure, gave him the business phone number. The result of that was Dave coming home from work and saying, we're going to have a conference call. I said, what? He said, oh yeah, Michael's going to be on the phone in California, Carol in Maine, and us here in New Jersey. Well, that didn't set too well with me either. I didn't get angry, I was just scared. I didn't want to hear a birth mother's voice. That meant that was real. A letter's okay, but boy, that's a real person. But we did it. We sent the kids to the movies, and the call came in August, and there was this woman talking to me, and she sounded just like any other woman. And we talked at length, and I did tell her then that David had dyslexia. And that was one of the reasons I was really concerned about his having this information. And there was dead silence on the other end of the phone, and she said, oh, I don't think there's anything like that in our family, but I will find out and get that information to you. In the meantime, I also had promised, I said to her, well, I'll be happy to send you pictures. So I did. I got a couple of pictures and I put them in an envelope. And then we sort of agreed that we'd meet. She said, I'd really like to meet you so you know that I'm just an ordinary person and I'm not trying to do anything to threaten your family. And I said, sure. She comes to New York City a lot. She binds and restores antique books, so she comes in there for customers and business. So, and we're not too far from New York City, in Morristown. In my mind, I said, I can't do it. I really can't. Maybe I'll work up the nerve, I don't know. Within a week, however, we received in the mail a large packet, and in that large packet was all of David's hospital records and her hospital records. And there it said that when he was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck 3 times. It was very specific, and there was an oxygen insufficiency. Since that time, she's checked back through her family. David has too, and there really is no indication of severe dyslexia. So if nothing else, and there's been a lot of good things come out of this, we're pretty sure that David is not going to have a son with dyslexia, because it's that the tendency for it is inherited, it's passed down through the male line. Once in a while a female gets it, but it does go through the male line. To condense it, we never did meet in New York. The fall came on and I started to get sick, and I was chairman of our church bazaar, and it was just no good, not telling. So Dave and I decided that we had to tell David. We'd have to take the chance. You know, and then also in the background was Karen, who was not the personality of David, and we had no idea how she would react to this, but both of them had to be told. So I think I'll stop here talking and let David tell you what happened when we proceeded to tell him.
Well, it was on a Wednesday afternoon, and my father was home early from work. And I thought to myself, something's strange here. And they sat me down in the living room, and we don't generally sit in the living room as a family. And I was thinking to myself, they're going to tell me something awful. There's something really wrong here. They're going to tell me something. It must be bad. Maybe my grandmother had died or something along those lines. And they sat me down, and I'm not sure of the actual words or anything, but they told me that they had that my birth mother had contacted me. And more or less right after that I broke down in tears, and part of that was I was just so relieved. I was ready for the worst, and here they're telling me something, one, I had never thought about, or never thought that was going to be what they're going to be telling me, at least. And the other, what I considered, man, hey, that's pretty good news, isn't it? So then they started to cry and all this. And then it came up the question, well, this is nice, but how we need to tell Karen now also. And that became the next major issue in this for us. And after consulting our minister once again, decided that it would be best that we had to tell her. And I felt that as though I had to tell her. And I had to choose a point where I knew that things between us were going fairly well, because we were brother and sister as much as any brother and sister were, and generally we had our good points that generally ended up bad, so or good times that ended up bad, and I chose a point where we were playing along just fine and all, and I told her that my birth mother had contacted me and everything I had known up to that point, and she started to cry and all. We went back upstairs, and Mom said something like, "I don't want to hear about it," or something, figuring I had hit her or something like that. Something like that. So once she was told, that just left the issue of dealing with Carol. I mean, that was a breeze compared to everything building up to that point. We arranged to meet Carol outside of Newark, and my mother went, Karen went, and also our friend Rosemary went with us. And we got into the lobby of this hotel, and the three of them went in, Rosemary, Karen, and Mom, into the bathroom. And I'm standing outside of the women's bathroom. And out comes this woman, who I guess I had seen pictures of her prior, but
Yeah, I don't know if we had pictures of that now.
I said, "Carol," and she said, "Dave," and I said, "Hi." I said, everyone just went into the bathroom. So it was very awkward. And people asked me, "How was it?" And I said, "It was awkward." Here's a person that a significant part of my life I hadn't seen for 14 years, and the last time I didn't say anything to her, or at least nothing meaningful. And you know, what do you say to a person? I mean, there's that connection there. Yet, oh, how's the weather? Trip down fairly well. I mean, just don't start off saying, wow, why did you give me up, by the way? Or something like that. So, where should I go now? Should we show the videotape of...
Well, no, I think maybe what you ought to do, we talked. We visited for about 2 hours. We had lunch and talked. And I think you ought to really go on to the business of your connection with her, how you went from there.
Okay. I never thought of it as much of a problem. Growing up, as it's already been mentioned, I had to deal with a learning disability, and always that was my problem. When I went to bed at night and couldn't get to sleep, it wasn't dreaming about some birth mother out there giving me up or anything to deal with that. It was, how am I going to get through tomorrow at school and things like that? Or what kind of job could I have when I can't spell or read? So adoption truly wasn't an issue for me because I had this major problem in my life. And the introduction of Carol answered questions that I never really thought of. And it was very much a surprise, yet at the same time, I think now of all the wonderful things she's brought into my life, just being the person she is and allowing me to have the heritage that everyone else is able to share. I was perfectly satisfied telling people that I was German and Italian and things like that, telling my grandfather came from Sicily, which is true. I mean, it was nice and spicy and all that, and it sounded good. But now I had the truth. And when a person asked me, I could tell them the truth instead of relying on my adopted heritage or actually going and explaining to them that I didn't know. Generally, I was never one of those. I knew other kids in school who were adopted, and when the question of heritage came up, they would point out that they didn't know. And I would just, yeah, what the heck, it's an assignment, I'll just say what I need to say. I mean, that's usually what I did in school. I just did what I was asked to do. I guess maybe a year after I first met Carol, within a year, I think I visited with her again in New York City. My father and I went in. I believe he had a business meeting to go to. So we went in and I met her and we spent the day together. And then a little while after that, I took my first trip up to Maine and spent several days with her alone. And we did a lot of sharing and things of that nature. And it's always been a very positive thing for me. And it's very interesting, one of the situations I find myself in, that my adoptive parents consider me very liberal, and my birth mother considers me very conservative. Now, they aren't the only people in my life who view me that way, but I find it very amazing how when I'm at home, I'm bashing like Reagan, and then when I'm up in Maine, I'm defending George Bush or something like that. It's just, that's one of the unique experiences I have to go through. She had been married to my birth father. She had been married for about 8 years. She always expressed to me that she would provide me with his address if I ever wanted to contact him. I generally didn't think about contacting him. The things that she said about him weren't very good. Things that her parents said about him were even worse. And she even called up after I had visited her parents for the first time saying, well, I don't know what they might have said about your birth father, Jack, but you have to remember those are their feelings about him. And the only time I ever really thought about it was when she brought up the issue. Have you given any thought about contacting your birth father? No, not until just now. And then it would fall by the wayside. And then I finally met a professor at Penn State who was a good friend of mine, who one day said, you know, I have a son just your age. And I knew his wife, who also was in the department, and I knew their daughter, who was 7 years old, but there was no son. I knew he didn't have a son, or at least not in the house that I knew he lived in. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, maybe I should explain. And he went on how when he was 18 or 19 that he relinquished a son. And I realized this was a birth father, my first birth father, and he was a very nice guy. And I liked him. and I liked him before I knew he was a birth father, so I couldn't dislike him now. And I realized, you know, my birth father probably is a nice guy also, or a guy, nonetheless. I mean, and probably would be whatever I made of him. So I wrote a letter that very evening, and I wrote one copy. I made as many corrections as I could, but I knew spelling-wise. But I knew that if I really read it again, that I wouldn't send it. I mean, they're never right. I mean, if you're writing a letter to someone and and it's a really important letter. So I sent it off, saying that I wanted a response one way or the other as soon as possible. And he sent a letter back saying that he was very happy that I contacted him, and that he always felt it was up to me. And that it turns out that had been one of the conflicts between Carol and Jack, is that he felt that she didn't have a right to come into my life, and he felt that it would be up to me to come back and contact them. So that was one of the many problems they had. I've met him. He has a new wife, or a different wife. I guess she wouldn't be so new herself. In fact, Carol knows his new wife from where they used to live, or where they grew up. So there's a little twist there also. And they have 2 adopted children themselves now. Yes?
Can I ask you a question? Were you, when you were relinquished, was that before they were married or during their marriage?
It was before their marriage. It occurred right after their senior year in high school.
Your birth did.
My birth did. My relinquished did too.
Yeah, right.
But not their marriage.
Their marriage occurred 3 years after I was born, once he graduated college. So I have an ongoing relationship with both of them now. One of the most difficult parts is that Carol and Jack don't get along, or Carol doesn't get along with Jack, and Jack doesn't see anything there. It's just, you know, she doesn't like me. So I feel as though that's somewhat of a new problem I have, but it's not a major problem. I definitely don't think about it constantly, just if I'm going to visit Jack, how I don't really talk to Carol about my visits with Jack and about his new adopted children. And I know when I showed pictures of his adopted child that it really irritated her. She didn't tell me that. She told my adopted mother that afterwards, and I realized that this is something very painful for her, and that I wasn't going to add anything to that.
Is that not similar in today's society in a divorce situation? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
the
just because,
same,
yeah.
the same playing both sides.
Right.
And those pictures help her probably to identify with you,
Oh, you bet.
you know?
Oh, I didn't realize that the pictures would be so traumatic to her, because Jack had given him pictures of the new baby. It was very exciting. First Brad, the little boy. And I had them in an album, and Carol came to visit,
Well,
and I just flipped it open.
I had shown them.
Had you shown them to her before?
Yes.
She didn't tell me that, but she told me afterwards that really was like a knife stuck in her. Because how could he adopt these children and not relate to the fact that she was a birth mother and that David was an adopted child, and
And insist that she was wrong in wanting to contact.
That's right. And they had a birth mother living with them. Because of the agency, whatever it was, there's one of the requirements, not the birth mother of the child, was the same thing somebody was talking about before. And she said to me, how could he have a birth mother living in his house and not think about me and David? And then my only reasoning to that is, my husband's an electrical engineer, Jack, you know, men are men. And there's parts of their lives, you know, sorry men, but my husband once said to me, he worries about things, I worry about people. And I'd be willing to bet that Jack maybe feels a little bit of connection there, but I don't think it's the kind of, I know, how could it be the kind of connection? The man does not go through 9 months of carrying a baby, giving birth, giving that child away. I mean, that is something they can't experience.
Yes.
I have to say something. I'm a birth mother. Maybe I'm displaced in this group. I don't know.
No, you're not.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, my reaction would be, you know, here I gave up my own child, and then he goes and he gets married and he has a child, and she doesn't, I understand she has no other children.
No.
That has to be so painful, because
yes.
I belong to a birth mothers group, and I know the agencies all said, fine, you'll have other children, and none of them ever had any other children. And I mean, I feel lucky because I have another family. I mean, I have 2 other kids, but, and not that they replaced my son, but the point is, it pains me that these girls gave their only child away. And
That's
I
right.
can imagine her pain of seeing what has happened.
Oh, absolutely. And then to have the father of her only child remarry and feel free to adopt other. Now, I mean, that's his life.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for them. And I wrote them a note, and I got a response back because I said that they just adopted a daughter at Christmas time. And I can't help but feel happy for them because we adopted Karen around Christmas time. And I can't negate them for Carol, because I like Carol a lot too. We have a very good relationship going, but I will not talk about the 2 things. So I wrote them a note and told them it was the most wonderful Christmas of our lives when Karen arrived. And so she wrote a note back and said, it's nice to have a note from somebody who understands. So understand the adoptive parent side of it. I have, you know, questions about, as a woman, the man adopting a child and not relating it back to his son. But that's none of my business. And that I don't want to get into, because what's happening is good with us, and we're going to leave it that way.
Something that happens too that we don't always think about, there's a vast change emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, from age 18 to 40.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And so what one person's going to feel, what is right for them when they're 18 and how they relate to that. 24 years later, or 10 years, however old you were when you met your birth father, we go through different stages. I think totally different now than I was when I was 20 years old.
Totally different people in a totally different society.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that has made such a change, because we're not the same people, and we're living in a completely different world with different morals and different standards and different ideas and different openness than what it was then. But it still does not negate the tremendous wrenching and loss of a birth mother. She can't ever forget that.
What it brings to mind for me is that she's still dealing with the hurt of the relinquishment. She has not had the healing, even in meeting her son. Your birth mother is still going through a lot of pain, and until that's resolved, these feelings will be prevalent in her life.
They may never be resolved. You may never forget that.
It's not a matter of forgetting, but it's like letting go of what is holding us in what's not working in our lives. As a searcher, I see that more with birth mothers. Rarely with birth fathers, but yes, with birth mothers. They have not been able to deal with their grief, and it's holding them. It's holding them captive.
That's right.
I want to say something more about birth fathers in general. I have 5 birth fathers right now in a current birth parent support group, so there are many more birth mothers than birth fathers. But I think probably denial is a factor here with your birth father too, because what I've seen in these 5 birth fathers in this group is that, I'll speak of one in particular, he has been reunited with his daughter. He too was married to the birth mother for 20 years and then divorced. But he's been reunited with his daughter for 8 years, and it was only last year, so in the 7th year after reunion, that he got in touch with his own pain over the relinquishment. All those years, his only feelings about it, if he had emotional feelings, was for his wife's pain, the birth mother's pain. And men in general are just not given permission to even feel these kinds of feelings. So that all of a sudden it just hit him like a tidal wave, that he suffered loss too, and he grieved and mourned. And this is a 6'3" huge man, sat and just wept, you know.
And he's older, just as we were
He's
saying.
older, that's right.
And he's lived more
Yes.
years and had more things happen.
Yes.
When you're 17, 18 years old, you know, the world is your oyster. I mean, nothing, these things don't, you know, you're going to survive, and you've got your mind also. Those people in their 20s have their careers, have their minds on getting through college, you know, do have a lot of other things. Males especially, they have these goals, and things that interfere with the goals, unless you're a very, very unusual person, you can't handle those things. And I've worked with birth fathers too, who at age 40 have a completely different outlook,
Yes.
who have
Yes.
really guilt because they've deserted the birth mother. But at the time, the guilt wasn't so strong that they turned around and came back. They went. So it's a very, all the emotions involved in it are absolutely overwhelming and sometimes. I'm sorry. You're at that point, you've met Jack.
So, and I've met my paternal grandparents and also my maternal grandparents, and I actually was able to meet my great-grandmother on my mother's side. So, and that was very, very special. Carol told me later that she did recognize me, even though she was in her 90s at the time, and that Carol said that it meant a lot to her also.
Well, the grandmother was the only one who sympathized and supported Carol in the family. So she felt there was always a connection. And when David met her, she was deaf and had seeing problems, but we're pretty sure 6 months later she died. Also, we met his paternal grandparents on Cape Cod 2 years ago, his grandmother and grandfather. And 6 months later, his grandfather died of a heart attack. So that was very fortuitous that they met David. And, you know, both sets of grandparents were very accepting. They didn't refuse us the first time. You know, sometimes I was afraid because this is another generation, even though I'm not any young chicken, they're still older than I am. And with Carol's parents in particular, we were in Florida and they lived down there. And I called Carol and said, you know, they're not very far away. David had already met them. Do you suppose they could handle meeting the whole family? And so she called them. I didn't want to pop in on them. And they called her back and said yes, so they were prepared for us. The other unique situation that happened at that time was that Karen's mother, when we found her, and I'll tell you about that later, is also adopted. And she was adopted through Spence Chapin, which Spence Chapin would like to tell us. She has parents, her adoptive parents. They live 5 miles south of David's biological grandparents on the west coast in Florida. So that day that we made our trip, we planned it so we wouldn't hit at a meal time, so we could just visit for an hour or two at both sets of grandparents. Carol's parents, the mothers are the ones who talk. The guys talk about baseball and sports and the stuff, in every instance when we've met them. And so Carol's mom said to us, to me, did you get the stuffed rabbit? And at this time, we were talking and the tears were coming down her cheeks, and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, she went to the agency with Carol. And she said, on the way, we stopped at a store and we saw this beautiful little stuffed rabbit, and we thought, let's buy it, and we're going to ask the caseworker to give it to the new parents, and it'll prove that we cared. We took it in and we said, we didn't hide a name in it, we didn't do any, all these secrecy things, would you please do that? We never got it. Someone decided between the first floor of Spence Chapin and the 5th floor, wherever it was, that wasn't a necessary thing to give to us. Now that would have been a wonderful thing to have. We did find out that Carol had him baptized in the hospital, and that was very unusual to have that done. So he has 2 birth certificates, 2
Well,
baptismal certificates, both Episcopalian, which just happen to be the same, so they're identical, except the first one was Sean David Simpson, and the second one was David Charles Nass, so he's got David in both of the names.
And
So
we
that
only
worked
got
out.
that certificate after meeting Carol.
Yeah. When we met, she bound the baptismal certificate, because that's her business, and it's in a nice slipcover, and it's beautiful, so she gave that to him at the meeting, so we have those. Is there anything else you want to say about that? Because we have a quick tape that we'd like to show you that is the culmination of this relationship that we have gone through. And it happens to be the Joan Rivers show, which was aired March 7th. And we're just going to give you a clip of it. And I don't know if I've got it. Do I have it in the... No, I don't.
Do we have the whole segment?
We have the whole show. Why?
So I didn't get to see it.
Did you? I didn't want to take a lot of time here.
110.
Carol Simpson surrendered her newborn son, David, for adoption almost 24 years ago. She made a search him out now. Jane Nass is David's adopted mother. After some initial fear, she welcomed Carol into his life and into her life as well. And David, of course, is a lucky son now of both Carol and Jane. Will you please welcome all? First with you, Carol. What happened? You married, not married?
I was 18 and I had just graduated from high school and I was on my way to college and I became pregnant.
And you told your parents?
And I told my parents, and this was back in it was in 1965. And a woman at that point in time really had one choice, and that a single woman had one choice, and that was to leave town.
So you came where? To New York?
I came to New York, and I went into a maternity home and prepared to surrender my child for adoption.
Did you ever see him after he was born?
Yes, I saw him after he was born, and it was, I held him for 5 days. We were together in the hospital, and I grabbed every moment I could for myself, because I was told that once I surrendered, that was the end. And if I loved my son, I would surrender him for adoption.
Of course.
Because I was inadequate to raise him. I was a single woman.
And very young.
And young, right. And also to allow myself to go on in life. I was also to give him an opportunity of having 2 parents, and also I myself would have the opportunity to go on with my life, to go on to school, and I would forget about this, and I would be a happy, productive person.
Now you went on, gave up the baby.
I gave up the baby, but my life did not go on. I became frozen in time. I was not allowed to grieve.
And you got married eventually.
Well, 3 years later, I married the birth father.
You married the birth father?
Yes.
You married?
Yes.
Now.
Surprised her.
He knew there was a baby.
Oh, yes, he knew there was a baby. He also was going on to college, and that was, this was an untimely pregnancy. And
Guilt the 2 of you must have felt.
yes.
Did the marriage work out?
We were married for 12 years, and I needed to search. I had to search. I went into a serious depression because I'd never been allowed to grieve from the surrender and loss of my child. And he was not able to support me in it. He just was at a different place.
Did you have other children?
No, I never did.
Oh. So now how did you decide to go after David?
Well, I went into therapy because of the depression, and my therapist said, there are people who do search. And I said, wow. This doesn't have to be forever. This door closed.
So you found
I joined a support group and a search group, and I did finally find
And did
out
you write
his
a call?
identity. I agonized because David was a minor, and my goal was to find out that he was alive and well. Then the ultimate I wanted was for us to have a warm and loving relationship. And I felt that I needed to include his adoptive parents in that.
So you wrote, or
I wrote a letter to the adoptive parents.
which is
Jane.
Jane. Now, what happened? You're home, you adopted a child, here's your son, how old were you then?
14.
14. And you get a letter in the mail?
That's right.
You do?
We had adopted 2 children. We had a daughter since then. What did I do? I think I called it 3 F's. First, I was elated. I read the letter, elated, that's right. I received the letter, I was alone, and I read it. It was a very nice letter. And I thought, oh wow, David has another family, because our family was very small. And then fear set in. Oh my God, what's she going to do? Here's this birth mother. The agency told us that she would never be able to get records. She'd go home and forget, and everything was sealed, and if we raised the kids properly, it would be just like a biological family. I hadn't even thought about anything like this ever happening. And then fantasy set in. And I thought, uh-oh, here I am, an old adoptive mother. There's a beautiful young birth mother out there. What's going to happen if this should ever take place, a meeting? Scared to death. Scared to death. I had never read a book on adoption. I had never belonged to a support group. Nothing. This just came out of the blue. In fact, it was 10 years ago this March that the letter arrived. So this is our 10th anniversary.
Now, did you know you were adopted, David?
Yeah, my parents always told me I was adopted. I had known for as long as I knew what adoption was. My sister and I used to thought it was a great idea because we could get married since we weren't related. You know? So my parents agonized. My first report card came back, and I was doing all right in high school. They sat me down in the living room, and they were very serious and everything. And I thought they were going to tell me something really awful, that maybe they were getting a divorce, or my grandmother was sick, or something like that. And they told me that they had been contacted by my birth mother. And I was so delighted by this simple news they told me. I was ready for something awful, and here it was something wonderful.
What was the first meeting like?
I think it was awkward. First time we met together was at a Holiday Inn outside of Newark Airport.
That's awful. Is that awful?
She's funny.
I think that happens in spite of you being near the Newark Airport.
You know? And it was raining that day. It was terrible. Did you turn the fan off altogether?
I couldn't really turn it down.
Parents for open records. PO Box 193, Long Valley, New Jersey, 078.
I edited the commercials out. It's, yeah, not very good. You see a lot of snow. I hope I edited them out. Yep. It's not easy to do as an amateur. Whoops.
Before you.
So you
never gave us the answer.
See, there's Joe Saul. He was on at the beginning, so I'll play it for you at the end with the rest of it in.
The first time I ever saw her, she was coming out and winked at my mother and sister going in. So we didn't have a whole lot to say at first. It took a little time to warm up.
There's a very good relationship now. Do you feel torn?
Not at all. I think it's wonderful. It was something I could never imagine, and I have the best of all worlds now.
All right, what's going to do when you walk down the aisle, getting married, and which mother's going to be taking you down that aisle?
I don't know.
Are you going to have to walk twice?
I think it's actually worse for whoever I marry.
She's a Sarah.
David, are you studying to be a diplomat?
I have
to say something about walking down the aisle. Easter weekend, my daughter got married, and she had 2 dads walk her down the aisle.
Oh, I think
It's
that's
neat.
wonderful.
And when it came to the
Oh.
part where the minister says, who gives this bride, you know, they in unison sang out, her mother, and we do.
You know, when you think of fractured families today, not through adoption, but because of divorce and death and all the things, sometimes I think we look at adoption, or the society looks at adoption with such a different, like a jaded eye, and I can't see that in a lot of instances, except for the tremendous traumatic surrender of the birth mother in this instance, the difference, the family, sometimes they're even messier. We have stepmothers and lots of grandparents. So one thing I did want to say, as a result of that Joan Rivers show, the group that I belong to, since I got involved with this, is Adoptive Parents for Open Records. There was an article in a magazine called First last summer on an adoptive mother helping her daughter search. And our address was in there, and the Joan Rivers show address was on there. And this is not phone calls that were received. All of these, the blue are adoptees, the yellow are birth mothers, the white are adoptive parents, and sad to say, there's very few whites on the map. And the green are significant others. These are all letters that we received as a result of that one article and that one show, from all over the United States, and we had some from Alaska and some from Canada.
And they were positive.
Yes, they all wanted to look. They all wanted to search. So the baloney that people say that nobody's interested is absolutely for the birds. And when we get home, we'll find more letters. And we're not a large group. We're maybe 5 of us, and we've answered every one of those and sent them information for support groups in their area or any place where they can contact.
Oh,
So-
where are you based at?
We're in New Jersey.
Okay, but you have chapters all over the United States?
No, it's just, we have contacts, like Sue Martin, who is here in this area. She's a member, a representative of ATFOR. And this is our brochure, and we've made a videotape. I'll show you briefly a videotape, 2 videotapes, if you're interested in any kind of literature for your groups. The other thing that I wanted to show you that we have done, we were talking about what happens. These are the fears, and for several meetings we made charts of the fears that birth parents have when they're about to meet. And you don't have to write it down. We have a packet that we'll sell you for a couple of dollars that has a lot of information in it, that has what adoptive parents fear and what birth parents fear. And this we got from meetings we had with them. And then there's another chart here that has adoptee fears. The fear of rejection is all of them. I mean, that's one of the basic fears that we all have, that either there's going to be some kind of rejection. Now, I think I will move on to the next story in our family, and that is my daughter. After I met Carol, and she was in New York, she called one day and said, I'm going to be in New York. Would you like to look up Karen's birth name? And I said, well, only if Karen's interested. Now, Karen's 10 years old at the time. So I said to her, want to go in? She said, sure. So we met Carol in New York and went to the library. And you may know there's a way of going through the birth records in the 5 boroughs of New York. And I knew what hospital the kids were born in, also had their birth certificate number. So the 3 of us sat down, Carol and Karen on the lower end of the alphabet, and myself on the upper end of the alphabet. Now, Spence Chapin gave us names. The social worker, when we picked up David, said his name was Sean David Simpson. And because she knew he had been baptized. She says, that's unusual, but it's probably fictitious. Not written, verbal. When we picked up Karen, the social worker said a name, and I heard Kimberly. And the last name I thought was Katzenbach, because I knew it was a long name. But somehow I forgot that last name on Karen, but I knew the first name, Kimberly. So we looked in Katzenbachs in the book, and there were no Katzenbachs, so we had to go through the whole thing. And now when Karen was 10 years old, we found the name Schinnerling, Schinnerling, which I thought was Pennsylvania Dutch. So we ran over to the phone books in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, no Schinnerlings. So that ended that, and we went home. Carol went her way, and we went home. When we got home, Karen picked up the Morris County phone book in New Jersey. And I was fixing supper, and she says, hey, Mom, there's a Schinnerling in the Morris County phone book. I said, wow, that's unusual. If you ever want to search, we could start there. And that was the end of it. for 4 years or 5 years, till Karen got to be 17. And there was no birth mother calling her. I kind of thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if Karen's a different personality from David, and she never says anything, and she's kind of angry a lot of the time. And she never did talk about it. I did give her information, non-identifying, from Spence Chapin. And the one thing she did with that was to cross off the heights of the parents, because she's only 5 foot tall. And her mother was in there 5'5", and her father was 5'10". So she crossed them off and she changed them to short people. So she figured that couldn't be, that they were supposed to be short too. So when she approached 17, I had just started to get interested in ACT4 because I had offered to go to adoptive parents groups and talk to them, because I figured if it happened to me, it's going to happen to them. And I had nobody to turn to. I was really out in left field. I spoke to one neighbor of mine who was an adoptive parent. I met her at midnight and we sat on the curb. I didn't want anyone to know and to talk to her. I just wanted to tell her, you know what she said to me? Tell her to bug off. It's none of her damn business. And I said, I can't do that. She said, I would not respond to her. I'd get a lawyer. I would do this. Tell her to go to hell. And so that was the end of that conversation with that mother. And her kids are grown and they have lots of problems, and they should be doing some looking into their background and making some contacts. And I give her books, but I just have not, I do not talk about this anymore. I gave her tapes of these shows, but I don't even know if they look at them anymore. Anyway, I decided that since I had a name, I didn't even think about that Schindlerling in the phone book. I found out that the hospital records are open in New York City, and I spoke to a woman named Laurie Thompson, who's a genealogist, and she told me that we could get Karen's hospital records. So the way to do it was to write a letter and have Karen sign her birth name to that letter. So we did. She signed her name, sent a money order in, and in a few days we got back all of Karen's hospital records. And what we wanted was her mother's first name, and it was Carol. So, the records came, I had them in an envelope, and I said, here you are. I've done all that I can do. I'm not interested, says she, and that disappeared. A week and a half later, I was leaving the house to go to a meeting, and Karen's in the kitchen, and she yells, hey, Mom! And I said, what? You know that Schindlerling in the Morris County phone book? Her first name is Carol. And I turned around, I said, how do you know? Because it was a C. Schindlerling in the phone book. I called her. You did? What did you say? Well, I just asked her what her first name was. There was an address on that hospital information. I asked her that and a phone number, and I said, what did she say? She didn't know. And I said, what did you do? I hung up. I said, you didn't tell her who you were, you didn't give her a phone number to call back, nothing. So I sat her down and I said, this is the worst thing that you could do. I've gone to enough meetings now that birth mothers have said that if a child comes and takes a look at me and says, that's all I want to see, so long, goodbye, slams the door, nothing could be more devastating. And I said, Karen, you've got to call her back. I won't do it. Well, I found out later she didn't even call her. She had a friend of hers make the phone call. She didn't do it. So I said, you want me to call? Because something has to be done. And she said, yes, you call. So I called somebody from Alma, because calling was scary to me. Because that letter from Carol was real good. And that calling was just, I can't tell you how frightened I was when I picked up that phone and dialed the number. And a woman answered the phone. In fact, it was a man answered the phone first, and then I asked for Carol. And I went through the spiel that Alma tells you, is this a time, I have something very personal, and she kept saying, yes, 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 and then I said, is 12/10/68? She said, oh, yes. She said, I couldn't figure out when you were going to get to this. I've been waiting, I guess it was 2 weeks, waiting for 2 weeks for this call to come. She said, I was coming home with groceries in both arms, expecting a call from a friend, picked up the phone, and this young voice asked me questions I couldn't answer. And she said, before I had a chance to find out anything about it, the phone hung up. And she said, I knew there was a connection with my daughter. And she said, I have just been devastated, thinking that maybe I would never, ever be able to get hold of her again. So this was the week before Mother's Day. So we met at Bennigan's the week before Mother's Day, and I took an album with Karen's baby pictures in it. They look alike, they talk alike, they have the same personality. I've walked next to Carol a couple of times, and I think it's Karen. She moves like Karen. When I talk to her on the phone, she has the same laugh. I've been pushing Karen for 18 years to get busy, get to college, get to that. Carol, they're both laid back, you know. Everything, it's just a personality situation, and it's genetic. And nobody can tell me that those genes don't have a heck of a lot to do with the way you are functioning in life. I can't compare him with Carol too well because he's a man. And the pictures of Jack, I've got an album over here if you want to look. Jack's a little pudgier than David, but he's got the same curly hair and things like that. But it worked out okay, and Carol Simpson, David's mom, and I have talked about it a lot this last time before we went on the Joan Rivers show, because we've heard of so many adoptive parents rejecting, birth parents rejecting. We think the reason ours worked as well as it did is because neither of us closed the door, neither of us pushed. I mean, when I wasn't doing anything, she didn't right away send a letter. We did it a little bit at a time. Neither of us dumped on each other for a while. It was a very, a very slow process. And when I hear of these stories, of the negative responses that people have, I know how scared they are. I know that adoptive parents are scared out of their wits. So are birth parents. So are adoptees. Everyone is so afraid, and they're afraid of the unknown. If we could only get to them and talk about education. Talking is education. But we can't get adoptive parents to become involved of my generation, and I think they are the most fearful ones, because I've talked to prospective adoptive parents. Dave and I did a talk with the Resolve group, and they are so open. And 10 years ago, they would have just booed us right out of the place. But now the younger parents are receptive, but the adoptive parents are not. We don't know quite how to get adoptive parents back and talk to them. If I can't talk to my neighbor, if she won't listen to me and see that Carol's been at my house and that we're friends and that we're going to remain friends, I don't know. It's an extremely sensitive thing, but for our family it's been wonderful. And if there's anything that we can do to help other families work with adoptive parents, help the adoptees, or talk to them, just talking and letting them know that this has happened, that I was scared. The easiest thing to do when that letter came was to tear it up and bury our heads and say, to hell with this, you're not going to interfere in our lives. Everything is going along fine. But we both talked, Dave and I, about this is not just a letter from somebody. This is a part of our son's life. And he's a part of our lives. And for us to reject the person who gave birth to him is rejecting part of him. And likewise with Karen. And the fact that we were able to share in the reunion was very important, because it bothers me again when I hear that the adoptive parents are so closed that a birth mother has to go over their head and wait till the kid is 18 or 21 and make a contact outside of the family unit. And maybe that's the right thing to do, but if you have a relationship with your kid, you're all a family. The birth mother is part of your family. That's an extended family, like a mother-in-law who can drive you crazy, or all the people you take on when you marry. I mean, you're taking on a whole bunch of... I had a terrible mother-in-law. I mean, I don't want to ever... Maybe that's what made me more open now, because I know how she treated me, and what a hell of a life I had with that woman who would not accept me and rejected me. And I made up my mind that that would never happen, that I would never put my kids in a position of rejection like that. And maybe that's it. Maybe you learn these things through life. I don't know. I said to David yesterday, I've got friends I've stopped speaking to. It isn't as though you throw your arms around everybody and you're loving, but I don't understand why we can't get these adoptive parents educated. And birth mothers sometimes too, but
There was something real basic though in what you said about your initial reactions in not wanting to reject that birth mother because she was related to David. I think a lot of adoptive parents don't make that connection. Mm-hmm. They want to reject her because they don't want her to be a part of that child. They want that child all
to be theirs.
Yes.
That's that
and
possession
I think
thing.
that's something real basic in your ability to accept it.
Yes.
I was going to ask you, I contacted my son when he was 23, and the agency was going to contact the adoptive parents, but see, they moved from Chicago to Tucson, and so therefore I went my own ways and found out that he lived there. And one thing, his parents were probably, the first reaction was like yours, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And she says I brought a lot of hurt into her life because I didn't go through them. Now, I mean, I felt he was an adult. I'm an adult, all right? Plus, the way she acted, she said it wasn't the right time. When would be the right time? I mean, it was like all these things. And now when I still talk to her, she still brings up the point, well, you should have gone through us, you know. And, I mean, it's just, I have a real hard time talking to her.
Oh. And I don't know if that will ever change, if she's gotten that attitude then. I don't know if it will ever change.
And then I have to say another thing. I did talk to her last night, and she has another son adopted, 15 months younger, and David and him are really opposite. And I mean, I contacted David. He didn't contact me. But she said, well, I'm waiting for my Matthew's birth mother to show up on our doorstep. And she says, but I decided instead of that happening, because, you know, this devastated our family, I will give him all the background information on his birth mother, but he doesn't want to know who his you know, and she's saying, well, you know, David is so strange and different, and it's just, she just gets me so aggravated because she puts this younger son on a pedestal, and like there's something wrong with David because he's accepted me, and it's things like this that I have to, and I brought up a fact that, well, when there's two children, adopted children, a family, and one has searched or was found and there's some kind of disruption in the life, the other one usually is afraid to rock the boat. But she just like dismissed it. Oh no, he's just not interested.
I don't believe it.
I don't either.
I don't believe that that's true. I went to one workshop on denial, and I cannot, unless it's a very unique individual. If I had been adopted, I sure would want to know. When you look through albums and you see pictures, I was with a bunch of cousins of mine 6 months ago, and we were going through old picture albums, and there's the same nose and all the pictures that looked alike, and I thought, here's another prime example of what my kids could not have, even though there are some physical similarities in the family. I want to show you one tape that we did with Karen and her birth mother. I guess I have to take this one out.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Works better.
Yes. If I don't.
Men are good for something.
That's it.
They worry about things.
This is only a little excerpt. Carol Gustafson had this panel.
We're getting to David and to Karen, and I really would like to focus in on feelings of those who've been selected, because sometimes they're kind of pushed down to the bottom of the list as far as the feelings go. And I wondered, Karen or David, whoever cares to answer it first, David, was there a time in your life when you all of a sudden realized that you were separated from an original family, that you went into a grieving process also? We're trying to just zero in on grief right now, on grieving.
I guess looking back, maybe at one point in time, I had a brief grieving period, and it was right before Carol came down to visit several years ago for Christmas time, and I was feeling bad. I wasn't sure why, but I was having bad feelings towards Carol, even though she wasn't here. I don't think she even knows right now that I had these bad feelings. But things were going through my mind when I couched her, she gave me up and stuff like that. And this had already been after I had met her previous times. And when she showed up here, this room was went away, but there was that one brief period of time where I had those feelings.
May I just interrupt to ask, was that grieving or anger or both? Can you zero in a little more?
Well, it was a very strange period of time because the things that I was disturbed about, the idea of hurting the other, were the things I thought I had rationalized before, and I think I have once again. But at that point in time, it least back in high school, it's not a good time for me. Anyway, for some reason. And we get the Christmas season coming, Carol's mother, I guess, she was fine.
But so you were how old when you first felt grief and, separating?
I was in my junior year of high school, so I was 16. So, like I said, it was only a brief period of time before that. And I haven't had the same feeling since then. I've been had 2 weeks before. But it's all
Culmination of things coming together. Karen, how about you? Was there a time when you felt grief over a tremendous loss?
Yeah, I guess so.
Can you remember around what time, what age you were when it overwhelmed you?
1 through 17.
1 through 17. Now, I can relate, Karen, because our Joe had those same feelings. He grieved from the day he was placed into our arms. And we couldn't understand what had happened to him. He was a later placement at 6.5 months, so we felt that those years before he came to us may have played a part in his feelings of loss and separation. Because the home that he came from kept the babies there. They had mother nurses that took care of them, and so they bonded, evidently, with the nurse. And they bonded with the other little babies that were there in the home. And they had a process room where the infant stayed in one room. When you got to be a little bit older and could sit up in a feeding chair, they were placed in a different room. But there were 4, 5, 6 cribs where they had familiar little people around them. And then from that room, they went into a 3rd room just before they were placed into adoptive families. So we looked at Jeff's experience from the beginning, and it was one process of separation, and change. Even though we had the same nurse who was loving and caring for him, most of the babies from that home were placed at 3 months. So he also grieved babies who were placed before him. And when he came into our home, we found this out later, after a lot of thought and pain, you try to figure out what's happened to your children and why are some kids, more prone to feeling the loss and separation. Jeff felt it from the beginning. He verbalized it through his whole lifetime. That he felt very lost. He could not understand why he was given up for adoption. He understood the word love, and when he was very young, he knew that the birth parents gave up the children through love for them. But it became confusing when he got to be a teenager, and he said, "Mom, what is this love? If somebody loved me enough, they would have found a way to keep me." Now this is painful for me to be saying to everybody here, because there's a lot of pain in adoption. There's a lot of pain that we can't get rid of. And there's a healing process, but it has to begin from within. And by beginning in there with the truths and realities that we're trying to present today, there is a better way to live with the fact that you've been separated and that you're family now. But you can't undo what's been done. And I don't want to place guilt trips on mothers who've suffered enough. But that is a feeling a lot of adoptees have. If you loved me enough, you would have kept me. And it isn't until they've grown through a good many more years that they can understand the depths of that separation, the depth of love that you did. So Karen, I'm so sorry for those years of pain. Now we have to be devastated to you. Jeff also said he felt he didn't fit in our family personality-wise, that we didn't mesh. And there were lots of places where we didn't, which made him feel different.
She said something, I think.
So I appreciate your honesty, that it was from as soon as you could remember up until 17. What happened at 17? And so you stopped thinking about, you wanted to get out where? And so you were filled with other thoughts rather than you're upset and you got it. Right. Well, it took Jack a few more years, and he's a very bright young man, and he was so non-function with it.
The reason, I guess one of the reasons, Carol likes to talk, but I also, Karen, that's the most she said through this entire thing. Her mother said very little also.
Her body language said a lot.
You bet her, buddy. You're right. I
don't even want to be here.
That's right. I don't want to be here. I have to go to my job. I have to get out of here. And towards the end of this tape, she's gone. I mean, she as soon as she could get out of there, she was gone. And I've asked her to go to these meetings. We've tried family therapy. We've tried all these things. But fortunately, her mother lives in Persephone, which is like 7 miles from us. So at least they have connection. They have lunch together. They do things together. But she is not any closer to her birth mother than she is to me. And I don't know if that's going to be the whole Karen's life forever. But I said to Carol one time, her birth mom, don't be offended. If Karen gives you a long story, she can't meet you for lunch, she does the same thing to me. So it isn't as though she's treating us any differently. She's not showing any preference. We're both getting the cold shoulder. So I wanted you to see that, only to see the personality there and see Karen and her birth mother together, because they came in with the same colors on. And I mean, they hadn't planned that at all. And they actually reacted very much the same, except Carol is a woman and she's more willing to speak. She's done workshops with me too, her birth mom. So,
Oh, has she?
yeah.
Well, did they have a good relationship? I mean, as far as kind of being distant though, I mean.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, no one slammed the door. I mean, Karen did not slam the door on Carol, and vice versa. I mean, if Carol takes her to New York to plays, they go in there, and how much they talk, I don't know. Karen does not know about her birth father, and Carol is not going to tell her. So, that's something I want to know, but I know my daughter's not going to ask. What we are doing now, though, I just had a call from Carol this week, and she finally has found her mother's birth certificate. So we're going to do when I get back, we're going to do some more searching and see what we can find. If we can find Karen's biological grandmother. So we hope maybe that will be we'll have some good results from that.
Are you trying to find out who the birth father is through them? Is that it?
Well, she knows the birth father, Carol
She
does.
doesn't want to talk?
She won't talk about it.
Is she have any other children?
No, she's not married. No, birth mothers with only children, no siblings. And Carol Simpson, his mom, has other brothers. 2 brothers, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One named Dave.
But no sisters. And Carol Schinnerling is an only adopted child. Now, she might find some sisters. I said to her when I talked to her on the phone this week, maybe we'll find a family. Maybe she's going to find some other children in the family, or at least an aunt or an uncle or someone else along the way. Her mother tried to keep her. She was born in 1948, I believe, and the mother they had her in children's foundling, and she was not well, but she was in foster care for about 5 months. And the story that the agency gave was that her mother tried as hard as she could to keep her. I said, that's such good news. Doesn't that make you feel good? And if she tried with the grandmother, they were living together, hope the grandmother's still living. She may not be, but wouldn't it be wonderful if we get back and make that contact?
What do you think is really the optimum to have in a relationship with an extended family like this now? For example, do you have rules about how much all of you can see each other, like you would in a divorce?
No, we do have visitation rights. No,
but I mean,
no.
or is it just a very natural thing that takes care of itself in its own way, and you don't even
We don't think about it. Because, Carol's in Maine, David's here, he went to school up in Massachusetts for a year, and he was only 2 hours away, but both of them were so busy that they got together a couple of times.
Twice.
Right.
But-
When he was 14 and 15, he had to have permission to go. He couldn't just go on his own. When he got a car, he could do it. But it's a natural, it's been natural. When they've been able to get together. This one time, Carol was coming down to visit us, and I said to Carol Gustafson, when are we ever going to get 2 birth mothers and 2 adoptees together at the same time? And they weren't forewarned, but we did say ahead of time, would you do this for us, make this videotape? And they did. They were both cooperative. It was nice, because that puts them on the spot when you do something like that.
Maybe I'm going to ask the obvious, but the
Yeah.
title of the workshop is Why You Should Help Your Sons and Daughters to Search. What has it done for you, and for you, David, to successfully search? What change has taken place in your family?
Well, I didn't search, but...
Or to be found?
I think it's important to adoptees to be able to know where they came from and possibly have a relationship with the biological relatives they have. For myself, I don't have questions of, is there some kind of hereditary problem in my family? If I have children, should I really be worried about something? And also, it makes a person really, makes an adoptee really deal with reality. My birth parents could have been anyone up until I was 14 years old. I jokingly say, it's a shame that I know my birth parents, because wouldn't it be great if David Letterman was my birth father? So.
He looks like him. He walks like David Letterman. I watched that, so.
But once you know, you have to deal with the reality, whether it's good or bad. It provides you with that foundation from what you can build upon. I get along with Carol and Jack, but I wouldn't have been devastated if Jack said, I have a new part of my life is different now, and if you came into it, it'd be very difficult. Please feel free maybe to ask for information, but rather you did not come to my house and things like that. I could have understood that, yet that's not what happened. But I would have been able to work through that if that had occurred. Otherwise, I could be sitting up watching Letterman every night saying, oh, could he be? Maybe like viewer mail, you would get a letter.
Could you be my dad?
So,
but you also know what the circumstances were,
right,
and why you were surrendered.
Right.
That's
very important.
Yeah, it's very important.
What did it do for your relationship with your adoptive parents, if anything?
Well, before we didn't really talk about adoption all that much. And it wasn't because I was afraid to, and it wasn't because she was afraid to talk about adoption and what it meant to us. It's just, there was nothing to really talk about. And we knew nothing about just the non-identifying information. So how far can a conversation go beyond that? And I don't think you ever told me that I was chosen. Well, I feel chosen, or lucky, I guess is a better word, because I look at my friends and their parents, and they aren't adopted, and I say, thank goodness I have my parents and not theirs. And that has not so much to do with the fact that I was adopted, just that I like the parents I'm with, and I can see how other people have much greater problems with their parents, and they aren't even adopted. So, boy, I know some parents. So,
Wouldn't I?
and I think since that time, we're able to share many more things, such as this conference here. We wouldn't be at any other conference together. And it's allowed us to share the whole experience together, which has been nice. And I've generally have felt very open about expressing my feelings about the situation. And I think it's allowed for a general openness amongst the whole family. And it's just been a very positive experience, because there isn't any more, it wasn't so much secrets, but unknowns, really, in our family. we didn't know. I'm not all that worried about, even if it was genetic, if my children had a learning disability, would have a learning disability. And I was willing to deal with that if it does occur. Oh, it could still occur.
Yeah.
Well, I'm willing to deal with that. But there's so many other things beyond just that one possible problem. And sitting through high school and college and listening to all the things in developmental classes, hearing how hereditary problems over and over again, I think to myself, how would I have been able to sit through this class if I didn't know what my heritage was? Yes?
We have a 13-year-old with learning disabilities, so we have firsthand knowledge of those struggles. Did you make a correlation? Did you try and make a correlation between the fact that you had learning disabilities and the fact that you're adopted? You obviously found out later that there wasn't a genetic tie, but did you try and tie those two together before you knew?
I always felt that I was fortunate to be adopted and have a learning disability, in that I felt my adoptive parents being older were more experienced and were willing to fight for what they felt I needed in school. While if my mother would have been 24 years old when I entered school, how prepared would she have been to fight the schools for what I needed? And particularly if she had been an unwed mother, what would the school have taken her demands for? And I felt lucky in that way, that I had capable parents that could handle my difficulties. Now, of course, Carol might have been wonderful and all that, but up until meeting her, I had no idea. So, yes.
My first son also had oxygen deprivation and also has a learning disability. And his adoptive mom, I thought, well, it all ties back to that. And by God, I have an 8-year-old and she has the same time problem. And it's a milder version. But now I know how to deal with it, and I can use Michael's adoptive mom as, well, when you were going through all this, did you go X, Y, Z? So she's been a good resource person for me.
I think also that this whole thing has brought us much closer together. I mean, we all love each other, but you don't talk about it. I mean, you can go through life in your ordinary family and you don't say, you know, you mean a lot to me. You have another mother. But, I mean, you really do start to say, what do we mean to each other? What are our ties? And I just think it has done nothing but positive things for us. Once we got over that hump of that terrible fear, that, fear. That's right, it's there. And it's nothing but positive. And I just never, ever connected the learning disability with adoption. Never occurred to me. One psychologist said on the child study team that there seems to be a disproportionate number of adoptees in the learning disabilities resource room area. They haven't done any research on that, though. You see, so now they're starting to do research. And I don't know really what it's going to prove. It may prove that there is some connection, but you can never prove where a learning disability comes from unless it's a severe. So it may be mother's nutrition, it may be something to the brain. Now they've got alcohol connected with that. It's all over. And he's studying that now. So
It may have been the older adoptive parents. I mean, being a parent now in late 30s, I'm willing to get up there and tap dance on whoever's desk and say, I get help from my daughter, by God. And
That's
I don't know if I would have done that at 21.
I don't think you do.
Well, they really know best.
I don't think you know you can or
you don't know
how.
that you can.
Or how.
And I see myself even getting at the point where my mother always has been yelling at me because I read too many signs, or, you know, the signs telling you that you can't do something.
Right.
And obeying them.
Right.
And I'm only 24 now, I'm slowly learning that you can break your buck
Well,
the
I'm
system.
still that way. My husband's telling me.
Yeah, you don't have
He says,
to
I
obey
bet you
them.
stop at stop signs at 3 a.m.
You do.
If I ever am out at 1, 2, whatever, not ever 3. But he says, I just know you stop at stop signs at 3 a.m.
That's right. And then as you get older, if I know there's going to be a cop around, I'll stop at the stop sign. I mean, there's certain things that you do, but there are other things that you learn over your lifetime that You know, just because that rule says something, if you don't think it's right, and I taught for many years, and I worked with some lousy principals, and a lot of things that I finally got up my nerve to say, I'm not going to do what you said because I don't think it's right. But that's something that you just, rare young people are able to buck the system. And with a kid with a learning disability, you have to buck. You have a lot, it's getting better. But when he was a kid, I mean, the pediatrician even said, I kept saying to the pediatrician, he's adopted. We want to know something. Right. You don't know anything about his background. I had a friend with a child that was born early, premature, biologically. They did so many tests on her. I said, why aren't you testing him? Oh, no, he'll outgrow it. Went back to Spence Chapin. Perfectly fine. Everything's all right. Gave me the basic information. When we got the hospital records, I went back to Spence Chapin, and I said, look, Lennox Hill Hospital has this information. Why didn't you have it? And Rosemary Stowe said to me, we're not privy to that information. And then I said, I think you better make some other rules. I think that's unforgivable, that you do not have those the APGAR scores. They didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
That was all within, why? She wouldn't explain it to me. I'm going back again and talk more. I'm on a committee with Spence Chapin, and we're going to talk more. Maybe they've changed their policy, but that should be some basic information that should be given to the adoptive parents and not let us float in space.
Your Catholic family in Los Angeles, Orange County area, they have St. Anne's Maternity Home, and then there's Catholic Charities. They work hand in hand. The hospital is part of the agency. And when I had a birth mother searching, she had all her hospital records, et cetera, all the infant testing, you know, immediately after birth were on that. They were part of her record, and we did find out that once she found that the adopting parents had that as part as their
They did have
record
it?
too. Yes.
That's
Now I don't know
good.
if it's because the hospital or, you know, the maternity home and the agency are hand in hand, but that information was passed on. And
That should be
it is a
so
blessing,
basic.
yes.
And they don't do it. I mean, they didn't think it was important. I can't understand
No, I
that.
was at a maternity home that's in conjunction with a hospital, and they're totally separate. The hospital records are the hospital records, the agency records are the agency.
Yeah, that's right. And it does not make sense. But they are coming around, and they are learning. But common sense, I mean, that isn't even as a rule. That's common sense that you should have that information. And if you've had an adopted child and gone to a pediatrician and gone through that, it's fine. And I remember when Karen came along, I thought, no trouble. She could read and all of the things, and I just let her plop along. And I was happy for that. Really, she should have been held back. She should have been held back a year because I think it would have worked better, but I didn't do that. But I think I should have. That.
Well, psychologists disagree.
Yeah, you disagree? Okay, well, who knows? Anyway, if there's any way that I could help or we could help with anyone that you know as an adoptive parent, if we could contact someone, I'd be really happy to talk to them and, you know, and send them a letter, talk to them, or anything like that. We try to do that. I'm working with the adoptive parents of an adult son who have sent a lawyer's letter saying get out of our lives. And here's this wonderful birth mother, and I don't know why they're doing that. And we don't know whether it's the lawyer that's giving the information and the parents are okay. So when I get back, I'm going to get up the nerve and make a phone call, send a second letter or something.
I wanted to ask you, one of the reasons I came to this is because my son's birth father does not want to have anything to do with him or see him. And it's really devastated him. And what's the next step? I mean, you go around him, you give him.
Mm-hmm.
So I just didn't know where to proceed on that or have my son proceed, but
If he's not being considerate of your son, then why should you be all that considerate of him, and you should circumvent? That's just a personal opinion. I mean, but if he was saying in some way that if I'll give you some information, I don't want personal contact, I think that'd be a totally different kind of thing. But if he's just closing the door to information that can be so vital.
yeah, because I told my son that he had a right to a piece of background information. And my son related to him, and he goes, I don't owe you anything.
Oh.
I mean, I can't believe he hasn't grown in 24 years. I really am. I'm really shocked by it.
Right, believe it. But does the son have the right to circumvent to the birth grandmother?
Well, the
And-
grandmother's
and-
dead. At least he told my son did. When he did talk to him, he talked to him briefly, and he was going to meet him, and I don't know, he just had a change of heart. I don't know why. I was thinking of calling and just finding out, why did you agree to meet him at first, and now you changed your mind? Would it, are you afraid? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Could be a wife's jealousy too.
No, his wife, he's married like it's his fourth marriage. And she did not know anything about this birth. She said, I knew my husband had a past. But, so then my son gave him an opportunity to tell her, and he finally told the wife, and she was really nice about it, and said, but then he got really angry because my son told her about it. I mean, I thought, what kind of marriage is that when, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's so screwed up. And then, when he called back again, she used to talk to him, and then she said, I can't talk to you because he won't allow me to talk to you. I mean, so I don't know what kind of fear he holds over these people or what, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah, it's sad.
And not only that, my son looks just like his birth father. And so,
So he doesn't act.
But the point is, it's like, he's so happy that I came into his life, but he can't, it's like, he's still in the dark, like being adopted, because he wants to see somebody that looks like him.
Sure.
I look nothing like him,
Oh.
and it's really hard.
Are there brothers? I mean, are there uncles? Are there?
A sister. But that's kind of hard, because you either get married or something.
Yeah.
And then he has a half sibling too. And we found out that she was given up for adoption later. He was married and he gave up that child for that. He doesn't want any children in his life. Because he told my son he did not see her since she's been 3 years old, and she's 27 now.
Do you know where she is?
No, we're trying.
I would start doing some searching.
Oh, my
for-
son would think, they're like 15 months apart, and he would just
Oh.
love to meet her. Then he said at least they can vent their anger at him together.
Yeah, that's not so.
Single season,
Yeah.
united front. Knock on his front door.
That's
together.
right. But, that's not so dumb. I think that's wonderful. I think it's an excellent idea. I would get really busy on that angle, and I would find. I bet she'd be so, I wish I were adopted so I could find some siblings. I'd love a brother or a sister. It was really so nice, and it was so disappointing to not have siblings here. So, you're right. It's nice being an only child.
Yeah, at least one family.
Yeah. But I really would.
I was going to say, you have to feel lucky that your parents have been accepted. I mean, it would be nice if,
Oh, yeah.
you say, well, if your father said, don't bother me, I don't know, maybe you would. Would you really feel if he said that? I mean, wouldn't you feel hurt a little bit?
I feel angry at him, but why shouldn't I?
It's natural.
I'm angry, yeah. But so what? I'd be angry at him, and I can live my life being angry at him. Carol's living her life being angry at him. But it would be, you can't hold anger to someone that's in your life, and he wouldn't be in my life, so what's the sense in, being angry at him wouldn't hurt.
Well, my son has a lot of anger.
I just want to say that I think one of the things that's so refreshing about your presentation is that you're able to say things about anger, which are a part of life. Life has angry moments and painful moments and missed expectations, and it's full of all those things. And you're not heavy about it, you can live through it.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay, and you can.
One of the things that's
Be a
bothered
happy
me about
person.
this conference is it seems like, from some of the comments that are made, there are a lot of people that are stuck at that stage.
Oh, yes.
You just feel it in some of these sessions. And it's too
Oh,
bad.
it is.
I think birth mothers have a right to be pretty angry at this guy, really,
Well, I
did a
understand
job on him.
I understand what you mean by thinking that somebody's stuck, but I think it's one of those things that goes up and down. You resolve a part of it, and something re-triggers it again, and it brings it up, and it feels all fresh again. So I understand what you mean, but I know.
There is a lot of
But
anger.
I think what's really good today it makes me feel very happy is that, thinking somebody's a real, jerk, doesn't mean that you think they're a rotten, horrible person, you want to kill them, and you're going to live the rest of your life in misery over it.
It's just kind of normal, like the mother-in-law thing that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and you do have people in your life like that,
But
and
you
it
would
has
never
nothing to
give
do with
up an
adoption.
extended family because you've got a pain in the neck aunt.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't stand to spend 5 minutes with.
God, and you hear these families that are not speaking to each other, you know, and your whole life is spent with this kind of anger over something that was nothing probably to begin with. And one time along the way, Carol sent me a real quick note. I wasn't moving fast. Now, this is after we got to know each other a little better, but not met. And it was a very brief note, and it said, I think something should be done, or we should get together, and I forget the words of it. And I had mentioned this to her last time I was with her, because that's the one time I got mad. I mean, I was mad at first sort of inside, but then it worked itself out. But I was really angry because we were right ready to make the contact, to tell him, and it came at the wrong time. And I shot a letter back to her, and I said I was angry. And I said, do you realize that our lives have turned upside down these last 6 months? But I ended it with, this does not close the door. I mean, I want to continue, but I want you to know I'm angry. You know what she said to me? She said, I didn't want to send that letter. I was with my therapist, and he told me to send it. And she said, against my better judgment, I wrote that letter and I sent it. And she, when your answer came back, I went into his office, I threw it on his desk, and I said, look what you made me do. Look at the answer I got.
But you got the anger out in the open.
I did, and it was good.
We have a birth mother who's just recently written a book, and she relinquished a 5.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. She found the replacement parents for her children. She bucked the system in Manitoba, the social workers, the lawyers, and basically the thing that comes through, especially the chapter that's written by the adoptive couple, is that until they allowed themselves to be angry with each other, they didn't get over the fear that she was going to change her mind, that it was something, a confrontational thing that caused the anger to come out.
That it was just, and I was really, I was so mad that I don't usually do that. I get mad at him once in a while, but I mean, I don't usually, someone else not within the family, but it really helped me. I mean, to get that to say, look, this has been, do you realize what an upset this has been? Because I hadn't said that. And it was good. So, and I didn't know that. Here it's been 10 years, and she never told me that note came from, because we haven't been together long enough to talk about things.
And you do talk.
And we do talk. But we talk on the phone, and we talk about him, and he gets his good grades, and he got straight A's last semester, and he did this semester too. And my mother's dead, and I have nobody to call. And Dave knew about it. I thought, I'll call Carol. You know, here's someone who's going to be as happy as I am, that he's doing so well in graduate school. So, I mean, that's wonderful.
Anger isn't the only feeling though too. There's like happy and sad. I think every stretch of the emotion, and it's okay to feel all of them.
We feel it with a lot of
And if you
other
can
things.
share them, then everybody understands.
Well, and I
it.
think what's so refreshing about the way that they seem to have come through this is that they're not so intense and taking themselves super seriously and taking anger super seriously.
Yeah.
And
You
they
know,
also
kind of just
look at a child as a person separate and not a
give
possession.
yourself a little space.
It can be good. We've got 2 good reunions. My wife is a birth mother, and she gave up her son for adoption when she was 18, and then she married me, and we had 1 child. And then we couldn't have any more, and we adopted a daughter. And when my wife's son was 19, we had a reunion with that family. I say family because that's the way we did it. We all got together, the parents, and that was the only child they were able to adopt. They were in their 40s almost, I think, when we got him. And it's been beautiful. We spend Christmas at each other's house, and it's really family. It's, you know, they're really family.
It is family. I mean, there's
We just met our
connections.
daughter's birth parents 3 days before Christmas this year, so we had Christmas together. They showed up in the same town after we looked around the other side of the world for them. We go to the same church.
Oh, no.
Well,
Well, that's wonderful. You should be up giving a talk.
Yeah. That saves on phone bills and transportation.
Yeah, well, that one does, because that's local. The other one, my wife, the 2 mothers spend hours on the phone. They go to conferences together and talk to people. And
That's wonderful. And if more of us do that, if we could get adoptive parents to come to groups, to come to meetings in our local area, but they don't. David started a support group at Penn State, and we stopped there on our way here to give a talk. An adoptive mother called and said, would you talk to our group? And when we got there, she said, we called all the members of our group that have younger children And about 15 people showed up, which was good, and a birth mother showed up because there was an ad in the paper. It was their first birth mother that had come to the group. And she said, they all said, we're not ready for this yet. We're not even thinking about it yet. And they hung up the phone. And she said, I was really upset that they couldn't come and hear it now while their kids are younger and gradually build up a feeling about what's going to happen. And they had flatly refused. Now, maybe you can get some of them to come next year. Maybe you can get, give another talk.
Well,
and
I
do
told her
things
maybe
like
we
that.
trick them.
Yeah.
One presentation and then do another one.
Yeah, and do another, not tell them what it's about, just as a regular.
The other
person.
thing is you can get a captive audience. We started an organization that does pregnancy counseling and adoption placements, open adoption, and we make all the adoptive applicants come to a seminar before they can apply through this organization, and then we educate them. And we have my wife and the other mother come and tell their story and bring their son, and they get educated before they adopt, because their chances of adopting without being open nowadays are getting slimmer and slimmer. Birth parents have the choices now the adoptive parents don't have if they want to adopt.
That's right, it's kind of switched, isn't
That's
it?
right.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that either.
No, it's
With
good.
the void or the vacancy, really, you don't notice there. In our open relationship, when I talked to our 3.5-year-old about being adopted and born in another mama's tummy and who his mommy is, he says, I missed you when I was in Gina's tummy, didn't I? He's still trying to figure out, but at least at this age, he knows her, he knows the grandma. And it was one Christmas I was telling Sharon I would have preferred to have spent Christmas with them as opposed to my mother-in-law.
Right.
And maybe that's why I feel
Yesterday I went to an adoptive parents thing, and one of the mothers that was there said, when she was explaining this to a young child about when growing in the tummy, she said, I know it's womb, but she said, your mother made a mistake. And she said, I know now, but this was 20 years earlier. And I hate to say that you have to be so careful, but the minute she said that, she knew that registered with that 5-year-old that he was a mistake. And so that you really do have to think about how you are saying this. It doesn't have to be very, esoteric or something, but
My daughter had a similar observation that she had gone through part of her life feeling as though she were someone's mistake. And I gave her my perception was that she was someone's accident, and weren't most of us.
Absolutely weren't most of us.
I think that's one of the reasons.
Because I don't know any of my peers whose parents sat down and planned. And I know for a fact my parents did.
Yeah, I mean, we were some mistakes.
And that put it in a little bit more perspective for her, because she couldn't consider outside her own situation.
But when you're adopted, I think it means, because my son has a real hard time with that too. Saying that, well, he's got low self-esteem. He has to prove what he says is he was put on this earth for a reason. I mean, he was unwanted. And I try to tell him that, my first daughter wasn't planned, but you were married. He can't.
Will he go to meetings with you?
No.
Yeah.
In fact, he came in from Tucson to watch my children so I could come here. But he won't come to conference.
My daughter won't go to meetings. Karen won't go. She went into Open Records Day a year ago when Carol went along, but I wanted her to go to the Joan Rivers show. She wouldn't go. She did go to the Joan Rivers show.
Because it was the Joan Rivers show.
She will not go to these kind of meetings where there's emotions and you're talking about it. Her mom will, but she won't. And I kept saying to her, Karen, you need it. No, sir. She's resisted all those kinds of opening up and revealing herself, and I don't know if she ever will.
But if you've got a student in a classroom, you know that you have those students that are capable, able, and willing to stand up and speak in front of a group. You've got those students that will try or be forced into it, and you've got those students who simply can't. And those personality types and student behaviors exist in people, whether they're...
Regardless, yeah.
So, I mean, to have her come, if she's not addressing the issue of adoption is one thing, but if she doesn't want to be part of this, that's a choice that she...
I know, but I think I know what's good for her. And if she would only just do it on a gradual way, because she needs to open up and talk.
This would be so good for her.
Oh, yeah, because she's been angry. She's still angry. When we first talked, when she was a little kid like this, and we talked about this growing in the tummy, I remember the place in the kitchen, and this guy said, I understand she must have had a good reason, and Karen said, when I meet her, I'm going to punch her right in the stomach. And that was the only time she ever talked about it. Of course, she didn't punch Carol in the stomach, and I've never told Carol that.
And the other part is that her birth mother would always get her a horse.
Oh, yeah, she said if my real mother would get me a horse.
Right.
And when we met her real mother did not get her a horse. So, I mean, that's the story there, so.
Did she ever express anger to Carol, her birth mother? I mean, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Because my son did. He's had some words, and he said, you know, he was like walking on eggs. I mean, our relationship is into 9 months now, and I wasn't upset at all. I was so happy that he could finally.
I would be
vent that
happy if
anger.
Karen would blow up.
Yeah.
And Carol would be too, because she said to me, I've opened up the door for her to tell me she hates me.
Yeah.
And she said, I can understand, in this tape that we did, she sits there and says, you know, I was an adopted child, and when I had to surrender my daughter, I lived all these years not able to talk to my parents, but knowing how my daughter felt about being adopted, and her relationship with her adopted parents wasn't that great. They're still speaking, but it wasn't good. And she could see maybe the reason she doesn't relate to her adoptive parents, she's got the personality just like Karen. And Karen's not relating to us. If they were with their biological parents, maybe they wouldn't relate to them either. You know, there are some people in a family situation, they're never very close. So you
Yeah.
pin it on adoption, it could be something else.
But that's healing for you, because you can see that it's not you.
Yeah, you bet it is. Because I thought, what
That's
have I
right.
done? What have I
That's
done
right.
wrong for 18 years?
You
And
were
it is
saying that
really
just the other
healing.
night.
Yep, that it really makes me feel
And why did
a
it
lot
work
better.
for one and not for the other?
Right, because you can't say, well, here, some people have said to me, well, Karen grew up in the same family. Look at David, why is Karen? But look at your family. You know, here's a mother with biological kids that are as different as day and night. And so there
right.
you are. And I've had friends say that to me too. Jane, don't be upset, because look at my kids. One is a heller, and the other one is doing just beautifully. So you just, I don't know.
Kids can see it too. She might not express it to you, but just recently my wife asked our daughter, well, what is this reunion? Now we've had 3 or 4 months, you know, what do you think it's done for you? Because she gets all excited about stuff, but you know, now she's on to something else. That one's not exciting enough anymore. But it's interesting the way she responded to the question. She said, well, now I don't have anybody to blame for things anymore. I mean, she has to take responsibility. She can't say, well, you know, maybe you raised me wrong, or maybe my birth parents, you know, I got this from them. Now she can see everybody, and she's got to take responsibility for her own actions, her own decisions.
How old is she?
She's 21.
Oh, I was going to say, wait till she gets to be a freshman in college, like my next child. And he comes home from college, and now we get all the things I've done wrong, and then he doesn't even.
Oh, she hasn't taken
perfectly
Psych
willing to
101.
blame it.
Anything else? You want to talk about
I
anything?
just want to mention about the materials.
Oh, yeah, we've got some handouts over here if you want them, or if you are interested or ever want any tapes. We've got this Accor thing that's got our listing in there, and you can always send for, oh, and here's,
Can you send my
Picture.
daughter's adoptive parents a brochure from your
sure.
from your
give us-
postmark instead of mine?
Yeah, give them an address.
Yeah, I would like
Yeah.
you to do the same, but I'd like to also get this birth parent fears. You said that's a couple
Yeah,
bucks or
there's a
something?
brochure.
No, the videotape is 16.
Oh, it's a video.
It's
No,
a
but what
videotape.
was this?
Oh, that, yeah, it's, here's the price. It's $3.50. The
Okay.
packet. Yeah, it's packet 1. See if I'll show you a picture, Jack. I'll pass this around. Let's see.
Can we also see the rest of the Joan Rivers segment?
Oh, sure. I'll back it up. You see it. This is David's paternal grandparents. That's Jack's parents.
No, wait, who's this?
That's David. This
With
looks like-
glasses.
Oh, he's got his contacts in.
Don't do this, David.
And let's see.
Okay, so this is
That's
Jack's mother and
Yeah,
father.
his paternal. That's his. Where's Jack?
What happens is such pressure now on people to find everything.
That's a good question.
Where's Carol? Oh, yeah.
Mom,
Yes, honey.
they would like to know what package you need.
What's in them? I'll tell them. Okay, so
No,
Jack
they
is
just want to
in
know
it.
what it is.
The price, $3.50.
No.
What is in it?
You explain, David, let your mother.
Jack 50.
This is Jack.
No, this is my daughter. She responds to these.
It's a scare, but I'm not gonna look at that's scary, you know, I started to get my husband in his 60s.
So what-
That's exactly what I look like at 67, long straight hair.
I'm sorry, that's what all women look like in 1960.
That's exactly what Bill looked like to me.
Oh,
It was
yeah?
darker, but the beard, the hair.
Make sure, it might be
Oh, wow.
I think too, both mothers and adoptees.
Do you have a more recent picture of Jack?
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'll get it.
This is his first.